Okay. Good evening to everyone. This is Ashok Kumar on behalf of Construction Management Training Institute, welcoming Dr. Anjaneyappa for this wonderful session on construction machinery and highway projects. And I am welcoming Mr. Ashwin Joshi, who is the initiator for this particular program from Rasta. Welcome both of you, sir.
Thank you,
And,
sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
sir is having Dr. Anjaneyappa is having excellent experience in construction projects, and he is having academic experience also. And I hope this session will be useful for the engineers to take their career in the highway and construction management. You can understand how about the construction machineries or which are all involved, because nearly 7 lakh crores of investment is there by the Indian government, and there is enough opportunities available for the highway engineers, highway execution engineers, design engineers, and various profiles, including quality control and quality assurance, the contracts management, the quantity surveying, planning. Lot many roles are available in the highway field. So we are focusing on this particular area today evening. And this is our 59th webinar, sir. We have started this webinar series 2 months before. And daily average one webinar we are doing as a free education for the students and the working professionals to keep them engaged and updated about the knowledge, so that the time is meaningfully used by them for the knowledge addition. And Nikita, can you share the sir's profile to the audience?
Yes, I can do. Am I
Yeah, yeah, please.
okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Myself Nikita from Atria Institute of Technology, and I'm currently working as an intern in Prayojana Engineering Services. So, this today's topic is construction machinery for highways projects. A small note on highway engineering: it is an engineering which is a subset of transport engineering, which itself is technically a component of civil engineering. There are two primary metrics of quality of highways, which is efficiency and safety. So, highway engineering is a multidisciplinary field with interconnected sub-disciplines that include planning, safety, operations, design, and related fields such as structural, hydraulic, and geotechnical engineering. So, with the increase of the population, there's a high demand in more infrastructure in industrialization, agricultural, and roads construction. So, this demand will go forever on increasing in exponential form. On this note, we definitely required many equipments and machineries to construct a highway project. So the main essential expertise in the equipments are mining equipment, earth moving equipment, agriculture equipment, and construction equipments and machineries. So this is the topic and a brief note on it. And to give a brief note on the speaker today, he is Mr. Anjaneyappa and is currently Associate Professor in RV College of Engineering, Bengaluru. Earlier, he was working in the consultancy organizations and involved in preparation of project reports of highway projects. He is closely associated with road industry for more than 2 decades and involved in organizing training programs for KPWD, BBMP, KRRDA, and other organizations on various topics of highway engineering. He has carried out many consultancy projects in the field of highway engineering. He has delivered many invited talks on various topics of highway engineering in seminars, workshops, training programs organized by many institutes. So, welcome you, sir, for the webinar, and we welcome all the participants. Please mute your mics in between the sessions and always use chat box for the queries. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Nikita.
Thank you. Thank you, CMT. Thank you, ma'am, for your kind words. Shall I start, sir?
Sir, 2 minutes, Mr. Ashwin want to speak on the
Yeah, please, please.
After then, you can continue with the
Yes, sir. Yes, please. Yes.
Mr. Ashwin, you can speak on Rasta.
Yes, sir. Good evening to all. I'm Ashwin Joshi. I'm a faculty in Rasta. Just to brief you about our institution, Rasta, which is an acronym for Rasta Center for Asphalt and Soil Training Academy. It was started in the year 2002, and we are located in Bangalore. Rasta basically is an extension and research center for VTU. Rasta is an initiative of Volvo Group, India, with the sole purpose of bridging the gap between academia and industry needs, and it's perhaps is one of the kind of institutions in the entire country, which deals with such Rasta is a non-profit organization managed by an independent trust of Volvo India Private Limited. We operate basically in four verticals: academia, training, research and development, consultancy. We offer two PG programs, MTech in Highway Technology and MTech in Infrastructure Construction and Management. That's a brief about of our institution, and you can kindly visit our website, rastacenterfor.co.in, which we are sharing currently, for any further query or details. Thank you, Ashok. That's it from my side.
Thank you, Mr. Ashwin, for the note on Rasta. I hope it will be useful for the audience during the Q&A. They may ask about more about the institution and all. Sir, you
Sure,
can
sure.
start your presentation, sir. We are eager to listen your presentation.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the kind opportunity. And hope I think screen is visible. Kindly let me know if something goes wrong in between, audio, video, anything.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. Is the screen?
Request the audience to pin up the screen of Mr. Anjaneyappa, Department of Civil Engineering. It is written. You can go to the presentation. You can right side bar. There is a pin tab. Is there? You can pin him so that if anybody by mistake comes sharing their screen, also you will not lose the presentation. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. You can start your presentation.
Is my video is on?
Your video is on, sir.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. So, thank you, dear participants, today for this discussion. My discussion is on construction machinery for the road projects. Thanks, CMTI, the Rasta, for this kind opportunity to discuss this important topic with you all. My discussion agenda today is I have taken 3 plants and 2 equipments. Crushers, hot mix plant, the pug mill, pavers and rollers. So this is my agenda today for my discussion. If we take the road construction cost, road project cost and its components, it goes something like this. The materials cost is about 50%. The plants and machinery cost is about 15 to 20%. The HR cost is about 10%. So if you look at this, the second biggest cost component in road project is the plants and machinery, huge amount. Say for example, if there is a 100 crores project, about 15 to 20 crores is spent on machinery, such a huge amount. What I mean to convey here is the optimization of this resource is very, very important, this plants and machinery, because investment involved is so huge, and optimization is definitely helps us to save huge amount of money. If you take today's projects, all infrastructure projects, including mainly the road infrastructure projects, all these projects are time constrained. Gone are those days where projects are resource constrained, means as and when the resources we get, mainly the money, we used to construct. Today's projects are not like that. There is no stage construction. It's single stage construction, and time is essence of contract. So there is a starting time and there is a ending defined end time. So the projects are time constrained, and any delay beyond the time schedule given warrants penalties. And if the project is finished earlier than the time scheduled, then there are incentives. So the equipments helps in this, so that we can meet whatever the time schedule of the projects. Otherwise, it is difficult to imagine. And look at the projects today we execute. I'm just comparing to the conventional handling of the project, maybe 2 3 decades back. All the projects today are mechanized. Gone are those days, mainly depending on the labor. So, and as I said, we need to meet the schedule, otherwise, penalties will be there. And demand for the quality as quality is also reached.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir.
Yes, please.
Audience, the screen is visible or not for you? It is visible, and a few students' PPT is not visible, saying you have to pin his presentation. So you have to go to people. If you
Anji
go
sir,
on,
Anji sir.
Yes, yes, sir.
you go to people.
Sir, sorry, Anji sir, can you
Yes, sir.
please reshare the screen, because a
Yeah.
couple of devices. Yes, sir. Now the screen is visible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is visible. Ashwin, for you?
Yes, sir. Absolutely fine.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
We cannot think of this high quality without these plants and machineries. There are some advantages when we are talking about these machineries for the road projects. All majority of these machineries are versatile. They can be used for different types of activities. Let's say the grader can be used for grading, can be used for mixing, can be used for even cutting. So, and the equipment delivers higher quality, not just higher quality products, also uniform quality. That's very important. Um, and then we can meet the schedule, as I said, because the production will be faster, construction will be faster, and because of this faster production we can save the time, so that many times, as I said, today's contracts early completion, there are financial rewards. And when we look at the cost of equipment, as I said, they are very costly. There's no doubt about that. But again, for the owners, there is equipment financing institutions. I mean, getting finance for these equipments is also easy. These are some of the advantages when you are talking about the equipments. Having said the advantages, then there are some limitations also. As usual, these equipments are very costly. The cheapest equipment is our roller, is about 20 lakhs. Then underutilization increases the cost of project, and most of the time, though we induct a very costly equipments, the plants for the road project, but most of the time they are underutilized. So this underutilization increases the cost of the project, and operation and maintenance cost is also very high for machineries. It's about 15%, a thumb rule. So huge amount, 15% of 15 crores it runs, and uh, all highway projects, you may be aware that these all people talk only in 100 crores, 200 crores, 300 crores, even smallest project, the PMJSY project is generally will be about 4 to 5 crores. So the operation and maintenance cost also will be high, and more than anything, handling of this operation of these plants and machineries requires sorry, skilled operators. And to be precise, there's acute shortage for these operators in the industry, skilled operators for various reasons. So, some of the limitations. Now, let's go to the plants, some of the important plants. This is a view of a crushing plant, aggregate crushing plant. Go to any road project site, you find a crusher, and this is the crushing process from the quarry. The aggregates are the rock is blasted, and then they are drilled, made into bigger boulders, and these boulders are transported to the crushing plants through the tippers, and they are fed into primary crushers, these boulders, and from this primary crusher then it gets into the secondary crusher, and from the secondary crusher the output will be of construction size, and many times this output of secondary crusher is again subjected to the tertiary crusher, maybe to control the shape and to increase the fines. So that's how the crushing plant works. So the boulders from the quarry are subjected to 2-3 stages of crushing. And if you want to classify the crushers, they can be classified based on the mobility. They can be classified on based on the function. So when we classify this aggregate crusher based on the mobility, they can be classified as mobile crushers or wheel-mounted crushers. What is the advantage of these mobile crushers? The crushing can be done at various locations. Many times it so happens for the projects that we may not get the source of this rock in one location for the project because huge quantity is required. So when there is a mobile crusher, this can be moved. Mobility will be easy, can be moved from one location, one source to another source, so that crushing can be continuous and shifting is easy. That's the biggest advantage of these mobile crushers, but again there is a limitation. The output of these crushers generally will be less compared to the stationary crushers. So based on the function, if we want to classify the crushers, it can be classified as primary crushers. Generally, the jaw crushers are used for the primary crushing. In the primary crushing, the input size, as I said, is the boulders. Generally, the size varies from 1000, it will be around 1200 mm, 600 to 1000 mm. And the output size is our soling size, about 90 to 100 mm size. So we feed the boulders in the primary crusher, and the output we get in the primary crusher is of soling size. Then this output of primary crusher is fed into the secondary crusher. Generally, cone crushers or impact crushers are used for secondary crushing, and we get fairly cubical shape output which is required for our construction. As I said, input size for the secondary crusher is around 100 mm. The output size is the construction size. Construction size may be 40 mm down, 20 mm down, 10 mm down, 6 mm down, and the quarry dust. The output of the secondary crusher sometimes or many times is again fed into the tertiary stage crusher for third stage crushing. The intention of the third stage crushing is to generate more fines because we need a huge quantity of finer content, sand content for the road construction. That is one intention, reason why the tertiary stage crusher is adopted. And to have good shape, so many times it so happens that the elongation, flaky particle will be more in the output. So to control that, the tertiary stage crushing is carried out. So this is the typical view of a jaw crusher used for primary crushing. This is the feed we use, the boulders, and this is the movable crusher, and this is the fixed crusher. So the boulders from the quarry is fed here. This is the input and this is the output. This cap can be maintained depending upon the output size that is desired, generally about 100 mm or so. So this is another view of the jaw crusher. So in the jaw crusher or in the jaw crushers, as you have seen in the picture, one is fixed jaw other one is the movable jaw or the swing jaw. And these jaws are made up of heavy duty cast steel or manganese chrome steel so that they can sustain the high vibration wear and tear during the compression. So more is the production that we get when the feed is of mixed size. Whatever the feed input size need not be for this, even for other stages crushers also. Always when the mixed size of aggregates are there in the feed, we get more output, more output. Uniform size always gives lesser output. And another important requirement to have a good production, more production, is the feed should be uniform. Uniform. So most of the time it do not happen. Sometimes there will be more feed, sometimes there is no feed, sometimes there is underfeed. So giving uniform feed to the crusher always is results in more production. So we need to adjust the jaws to control the size of the output. And we can have three combinations in the jaw between of this fixed jaw and the swing jaw. One is straight jaw. So here both jaws, the fixed jaw and the straight jaw, both are straight. So what is the advantage of this combination? The wear and tear will be uniform, and the disadvantage is the rocks, the output hangs up here. So because of that, the output may reduce many times. And another disadvantage of this combination, having both straight jaws, straight faces, is it produces more elongated or flaky particles. The other combination for the jaws in the jaw crusher is one is straight, other one is kept curved, other one is kept curved. So many times, as I said, the uniform feeding is not possible always. So in such cases, this is advantageous, and the crushing will be increased here area, so output will increase. The other combination is both jaws are kept curved, both fixed and swing jaw. And the advantage is it reduces the choking, and this combination helpful when feeding is very less, it's not uniform, or feeding is less. And the crushing height is increased here compared to the straight jaws. Here the crushing area is increased, and the flaky and elongated particles are further reduced if this kind of combination is adopted in the jaw crusher. Then comes the cone crusher, used for secondary stage crushing or secondary stage crushing. And you can see this is the cone, and this is where the input is fed from the primary crusher if it is used as a secondary crusher. So the feed is here, and this is the mantle, and this is this gap between this cone and the mantle counts what is the output size required. So this cone crusher can be used to generate construction size output. That means we get whatever the size required for the construction. And the gyratory head generates, the crusher head generates the gyratory motion, and the swinging motion is produced by the eccentric sleeve. The other type of crusher is impact crusher. You can see here again, this is also used as secondary or tertiary crusher, and this is where the input from the secondary or primary crusher gets in, and you can see the hammers, and this gap between the hammers and the rotor dictates the output size. So the aggregates here, both the jaw crusher and the cone crusher, it is the compression which breaks the aggregates. Here in the pet crusher, it is the impact which breaks the aggregates. This impact crusher can also be used for primary crusher, and impact crushers used when materials are too hard and when good shape of aggregates is required. So as I said that the aggregates are, or the input is fed here from the top, and they are struck by these rotating hammers in these chambers, and these hammers repeatedly throw the materials, and the impact is generated which is instantaneous, and this impact, instantaneous breaking, eliminates the possibility of hidden cracks in the output, and which is desired. So the impact crushers will have high reduction ratio. That means the reduction ratio is very high, and the biggest advantage is we get a very desired shape and also very high output from the impact pressure. If you look at the reduction ratio of a jaw crusher, it is 4:1 to 9:1. This reduction ratio is feed ratio of feed size to the output size. Output size. So, and here it is 4 to 6%, and here it is 1:15 to 1:20. So high reduction ratio is expected, and it is very important in the crushing to adopt step reduction. Step reduction. So is large difference between the input size and the output size requires huge energy requirement, and if this input size and output size, if that is very high, then excessive fines, excessive sand is also generated. Hence it is always desired to adopt stage crushing. Stage crushing. So the output of the crusher depends on the opening, jaw opening. Lesser is the opening size and lesser will be the output. What is the end product size required? Bigger size, more output. Lower size, output requirement, lower output. And kind of rocks, whether the input is of softer quality or harder quality, it dictates what is the output. And then feeding efficiency, whether feeding is the continuous or lower. So more and uniform feeding always gives more output, and depends on the density. More is the density, more is the output. Water absorption, if that is more, I mean lesser water content, output will be more, and specific gravity is inversely proportional, and smaller size feed always generates more output. So that's about my crushing plant. And then comes my pug mill or the wet mix plant, used for the production of wet mix. Wet mix generally, not generally, widely used granular base in our country. So this is the wet mix plant at the pug mill. You can see these are the hopper bins, cold aggregate feeder bins, and there's a conveyor belt, and there's a pug mill or the mixing unit, and of course there is a control panel. So this is the stockpiles of different sizes of aggregates here. The loader or the backhoe loads these upper bins, and we have the openings here controlled, and that opening can be varied by the operating the lever here, and the flow of materials is controlled, also controlled by speed of this the conveyor belt. Depending upon our job mix formula and by trial and error, the opening size is fixed for different size of aggregates, and speed is also fixed. From these hopper bins, the aggregates, mixed aggregates, moves here and gets into this pug mill. And here the pug mill, the known quantity to have OMC here in the pug mill, known quantity is pumped, water is pumped, and the aggregates and the water is mixed thoroughly, and unloaded onto the tipper, and tipper goes to the job site. So this is another view of wet mix plant, and all the operations are controlled by the control unit here. This is another view. Another view of. Then comes our hot mix plants used for production of bituminous mixes. There are different types of hot mix plants: mini plants, portable plants, stationary plants. This is one way of classifying the hot mix plants or the bituminous plants. The other classification is drum mix plants and the batch mix plants. Let's look at these mini plants. So name itself indicates they are used for small road projects, and most of the time, I mean, even these mini plants are used for maintenance activities, and they can be moved easily on the pneumatic wheels. They can be easily installed and transported in a tipper, big trailer. So that is the big advantage. The main disadvantage, they are not suitable for major projects, as the output is less from these plants. Then comes the portable plants. Again, these portable plants also can be transported easily on road or by rail. The capacity varies from starting from 10 to 80, 90 tons per hour, and this can be used for a project of job site of 30 to 40 kilometer. And the biggest advantage of this kind of portable plants is they can be shifted easily from one project site to another project site. So then comes the other type of plant, hot mix plant, the stationary plant. These stationary plants are installed on a permanent site. As I said, that these stationary plants will have the capacity of generating anywhere from 60 TPH tons per hour to 200 tons per hour, or even more, 300 also. And these are used for major road projects and suitable for a job site of 50 to 60 kilometer or even more. So the other classification is uh, in a hot mix plant is drum mix plant and batch mix plants. So this is a typical drum mix plant. So you have hopper bins here, and you have the drums here, and mixing unit, and this is the loading unit. Control room, of course, control room. So in the drum mix plant, we mix from these aggregate bins, get into this burner, and then if we want the wrap mix, any recycled material, they are added here in the end of this burning, heating, and then they are taken to the storage bin, and then to the loading bin. So from the hopper bins, the materials, the aggregates are get into this drum. Here the aggregates are heated to the required temperature, and from here the materials gets into this drum. From here the bitumen is pumped, and aggregates and bitumen are heated, and then it goes to the loading unit. So here parallel mix plant is the aggregates. Aggregates are also fed here. The heating is also burner is also kept here. So that means the heating and the aggregate flow is in the same directions. Hence they're called parallel drum mix plants. And the other type is the counterflow drum mix plants. So that means aggregates are fed from one side, and the burner will be on the other side. So this is counter flow drum mix plant. Then comes the weighbatch plants. weighbridge plants. So these are typical weighbridge plants. These are our hopper bins, and there is a drying unit and there is a mixing unit. So from the hopper bins, the aggregates are fed into these drying units where aggregates are heated to the required temperature. In this specific case, then after heating, the aggregates are elevated through the bucket elevator to the screening sieving unit. The hot aggregates are sieved first, and then they are weighed here, weighed, and then and then after weighing, it is fed into the pulp mill or the mixing unit, and here the preheated bitumen is fed, and both are mixed, and the mix is unloaded onto the tipper or to the storage silo. So the aggregates are the aggregates from the hopper bins are fed into the dryer drum, then they are taken to the screenings, and then they are weighed, and then it is mixed. So this heated aggregates from the dryer unit, they are sieved. Heated aggregates are sieved into, and they are stored in separate size bins, 20 mm, 12 mm, or 12 mm, 6 mm, and so. And they are separately weighed, heated aggregates. And then to this, the mixing unit, the preheated bitumen is pumped. So we have these bitumen storage tank, cold aggregate feeder bins, dust collector, screening, and aggregate bins and control unit. So all these mixing operations, starting from the dryer, the hopper bins, aggregate hopper bins, cold feeder bins to the output, all the operations happens in about 30 seconds. So this is the typical view of cold feeder bins for a hot mix plant. And my intention of keeping this the separate feeding, I mean the partition between each feeder bins is very important. Most of the times we don't find. So when loader is loading the material or tipper is unloading the material, this size material gets into the other bin, and this side material gets into other material. At the end of the day, when we are talking about whether aggregate the bituminous layer construction, gradation is the very important quality parameter, and we don't get the required gradation. So there at every stage we need to control the segregation to have a better control over the gradation, and loading is very important when we are loading cold feeder bins, and otherwise whatever the job mix formula that we thought of will go in vain. Another view. So that's about the hot mix plants. So then let's discuss about the pavers. There are different types of pavers available, starting from 2 meters to 16 meters. Generally, the common pavers are 5 to 9 meter. This is 8 meter wide pavers. So if you take any paver, generally it has got two sections. One is the tractor, the other one is screed, and these two components are connected by a tow arm. So what is the function of this paver? To lay the mix, the asphalt mix, to the required width, required depth, and required cross profile, as well as the longitudinal profile. So paver does the initial compaction. Majority of the compaction is done by the paver and then by the roller. So paver gives us a smooth surface, not only smooth surface, it also seals. It gives a sealed surface. That's the basic function of the paver. There are different types of pavers. One is the track mounted paver, other one is wheel mounted paver. There are advantages and limitations of these two categories. If there is a wheel paver, definitely mobility is easy and performance is also easy, but the only limitation is it cannot be operated on relatively soft basis, and maintenance is also high compared to a crawler mounted or a track mounted paver. So the advantage of a truck driven paver is we can pave higher lift thickness, larger widths, and relatively it can be operated on soft basis. Let's remember here, paving is not done on soft basis. I am using the term relative. So it can be effectively used in gradient surface, whether it is up gradient or down gradients compared to the wheel driven paver. So there are two types of screeds attached to the paver, the fixed and varimetric paver. So fixed are manual screed, and this is the variable screed. The width of paving can be adjusted based on the width required. Sensors, all today paving is mostly by sensor pavers, because all organizations ask for sensor pavers. Different types of sensors available in the market. Contact sensors, non-contact sensors, or a leveling beam. So here this is a contact sensor. Sensor is floats on the surface, reference surface, and this is sensed by the paver, and accordingly the profile we get. So non-contact, it is made to sense the reference surface here in and as per the reference surface we get the surface. So there is a floating beam also which can be rested on the reference surface, mostly the receiving layer. Here all in these cases it is the receiving layer, whether this case also, here also it is the receiving layer. That profile is taken as reference. Otherwise this sensor can be made to sense the guiding wires as the reference. This is the components of paver. There are augers here, and this is our hopper bin, and these two are very important: the screed, the augers, and the hopper bins. This is another view of the components of hopper bins, the auger, screed, and so. So what is more important when we are talking about paving is maintaining a uniform constant head in front of the paver is very, very important. Whatever be the type of paver, maintaining a constant head in front of the paver is very essential. Otherwise we may not get uniform surface. So if the head of material in front of the auger is more, then automatically the thickness of the paving thickness increases, which may result in non-uniform thickness, non-uniform profile. And also when the head of material is less in front of the auger, then also the paver thickness reduces, resulting in non-uniform profile. So maintaining a constant head in the paver is very important, and paving is an art. More than engineering, paving is an art, and paving is a continuous process. Any paving should not be stopped unless there is a genuine reason. Once we start the paving, we should not stop. We should not stop. So we should not stop unless warrant. So then only we get uniform surface. Whenever we stop the paver, creates a weak plane, and the first failures generally occurs wherever we stopped, because wherever we stop and start the paver, there we get temperature segregated surface, or segregated aggregate segregation will be there. Totally we get a weak plane. So as far as possible, any paving always should be continuous, and most of the time these do not happens. So segregation is very very important. So uh, the most of the times the with the, as I said, whether it is any bituminous mix, gradation is important. Hanging up of the aggregates in these feeder bins, maybe because of the moisture or so, uh, results in non-uniform. I mean, which may not meet the required gradation. So mixing time in the pug mill is also very very important. So otherwise segregation happens, and replacement of broken twisted blades of paddles in the pug mill is again very very important, and maintaining a level in the pug mill is also very important. If it is overloaded, mixing will become non-uniform, or if it is underloaded, then also it become non-uniform mixes. And fall of the mix from the plant to the tipper is also should be kept as low as possible. Otherwise, segregation again it becomes more. And this picture shows how the mix is loaded in the tipper. First loading is done here, and second loading done here, and third heap unloading is done here in the center. So this reduces the segregation to certain extent. So that's the segregation in the plant, and this segregation happens in transportation also. So during movement of the mix in the tippers, the coarser materials rolls down, and then segregation can happen. Segregation is separation of bigger size particle from the smaller size particle, and this cannot be avoided. Segregation cannot be avoided completely, can only be minimized. So, and controlling segregation is very 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 important. I would say the most important thing. So we should not carry small batch of mix in the large truck. So always whenever we are carrying the mix in the tipper should be full. So even during discharging the mix from the tipper to the paver, if the gate is not opened, the tipper gate properly or fully, then also the segregation happens. So not only that, segregation is one part. As I said, the temperature segregation is another issue that we need to be very careful. So always hopper should not be emptied. It should always the material should be maintained in the hopper bin of the paver. So in this picture shows an empty tipper. Still work is on, and the tipper is empty. Paver hopper is empty. So this results in segregated surface, non-uniform profile, etc. So maintaining this is the reason always the paving should be continuous, and to have this continuous process there should be synchronization of this all the activities, starting from the HMP, then the number of tippers required, the distance, and then paving, etc. All this should be coordinated or synchronized, so that once we start the paver, the paver do not stop. So the paver speed should be adjusted based on the distance from the hot mix plant to the job site and the capacity of the hot mix plant. This whenever this loading material onto the paver from the tipper should move slowly near to the paver, and paver will come and join the tipper. So the tipper should be at a place, and paver slowly comes and joins the stripper, then the material should be unloaded. Otherwise, there'll be impact, and that results in non-uniform surface. So whenever we want to increase the thickness or decrease the thickness, that increase in thickness and decrease in the thickness do not happen instantly. That takes some time, some distance. Generally, about 15 to 20 meters is required to change the thickness, whatever that we decide in the case of a manual paver. In case of sensor paver also, it is about 10 meters length is required to change that whatever that we decide to happen. So instantly by operating the lever or the gear, changing the thickness, it will not happen. So depending upon the paver speed and the plant capacity and the thickness, we should decide what should be our the paver speed. The thumb rule. Let's say this is my capacity. 100 ton is my capacity of the plant, and my paving thickness is 40 mm, and my speed should be 3 meters per minute per lane, assuming my density of material is around 2400 kg per meter cube. This thumb rule. So the paving speed adjusted based on the thickness, based on the capacity of my plant. So temperature in the as I said, thermal segregation can happen at many places. And this thermal segregation, as we know, the bituminous mix is thermoplastic and highly dependent on the temperature. So controlling the temperature is very, very important. So that results in poor quality surface. So by controlling the temperature, we can have different adjustments. These come as extra attachments to the paver, so that temperatures can be scanned and the sensors are attached, including all these are attachments of the antennas and the thermal scanners, so that in the paver board itself, the operator can see what is the temperature, what is the weather, and what is the weight, etc. All these can be readily seen and can be readily seen in the centralized plant. So both. So this helps in controlling the quality, as well as this kind of attachments also in managing the project. So this comes, then comes our rollers, the compactors. There are 4 types of energies, that forces that we impart to the rollers: static, kneading, impact, vibratory, or oscillation forces. The static and kneading forces are lower forces, so, and this impact of vibratory oscillatory forces, they generate higher forces, so the density also will be more. The intention of the compaction, of course, is to increase the stability of the asphalt mix, bituminous mix, to increase the resistance of the mix towards permanent deformation, reduce the moisture penetration, to increase the fatigue resistance, and to reduce the low temperature cracking potential. There are different types of compactors: static compactor, kneading compactors, vibratory or oscillatory compactors, and of course then light compactors. So static compactor means generally the soil compactor. All the compactors what we see can be operated both in the static mode as well as in the vibratory mode. This kind of compactors, if you switch on the vibratory mode, they used as vibratory rollers. If that mode is switched off, then they can act as static roller. So kneading is generally the pneumatic rollers comes under this kneading class. The force is generated by kneading action, and vibratory or oscillatory motions, they generate high forces, and for constrained areas we go for this kind of handheld equipments. So when we are talking about the soil compactors, how when do we say the soil compactors? When there is only one single drum, then we say it's soil compactor. If there are two steel drums, then we say asphalt compactors or double drum compactors. For a static roller, the compaction efficiency, compaction output depends on what is the grass weight of this roller and what is the speed and what is the material type, the thickness of the material here. All these governs the compaction output or the density level. For a kneading compactor, here this kneading compactor, it is articulated, and this cannot be operated in the vibratory mode. And whatever the gaps we seen here in the front row on the back rear side, these gaps are filled by rear side tires, you can see here, and it's a continuous operation. Whatever the gap that is seen here, it is covered by the rear end wheel, pneumatic wheel. So this compaction is by kneading, and this big area inside, so we can ballast using any material to increase the weight of the roller depending upon the density requirement. Generally, pneumatic rollers are used not to increase the density, mainly they are used to get the desired texture or to seal the surface. So this comes to the asphalt compactors, both are steel drum. And when we're talking about the vibratory rollers, the efficiency of vibratory rollers depends on what is the amplitude or the frequency. Amplitude is that when your machine is operated in the vibratory mode, the drum rises above and hits back, and also the frequency, number of such hits on the surface. So the vibratory rollers or oscillatory rollers efficiency depends on what is the weight of this roller and what is the material here, and the temperature and the amplitude and frequency of the roller. So these whenever we are compacting the plastic soil, something like block cotton soil, this attachment can be put on the soil compactor, and this becomes what is called pad foot roller, the pad foot roller, so helpful in compacting the plastic soil. So only precaution to be taken when we use this light compacting equipment, either on asphalt layer or on other types of layer, is that the thickness of the layer should be used, should be less. Otherwise, the compaction, the density that we achieve becomes less. And this is very important, very important for maintenance works and constrained areas where we cannot use this kind of bigger rollers. So static rollers, it is grass weight, speed, thickness, and pneumatic rollers, it is the pressure in the wheels. And for vibratory roller, it is the weight of this roller, amplitude, frequency, and speed. And for this kind of light compacting equipment, as said, they are more useful in hot roller. So the majority of the compaction, as I said, is done by the paver itself. Only remaining compaction is done by the rollers. About 60 to 70% is done by the paver, and only about remaining portion, about 20-25% is done by these rollers. So again, there are customized attachments for this to show the density of whatever of the bottom layer in the roller itself. So these are additional attachments on demand it can be attached, so which gives the live location of the payments and the as I said, your temperature or the density achieved also can be shown in this, and so that we can optimally use these machines. We can stop once the density is achieved. So all these can be used as an additional attachment with minimal investment cost. So there are some precaution to be taken during rolling. Maintaining uniform speed is very important, and we should not allow compactor to stand. Jerky start, sudden braking, sudden changes in the maneuvering is not desirable. That damages the surface. This small amount of detergent to be used, or vegetable oil to be used other than the water, and the performance of these equipments, chart of these equipments need to be taken from the equipment manufacturers. Generally, neither they give nor we, the customers, we ask. That's really good thing we should start doing from now onwards. So there are some big concerns when you're talking about these equipments. We have talked about all these equipments. But again, when we're talking about these plants and machineries, there are some constraints. Say, for example, if you take my crusher, it's 200 tons per hour. Pug mill, it's 100 to 200. My hot mix capacity is 200. My paver capacity, compactor capacity, I've taken just on the lower side, 500. So synchronizing the capacities of machines is very, very important. Otherwise, one machine, one equipment will be overutilized, other equipment will be underutilized, so the optimization will not be there. So that is one biggest concern, and as I said, the skilled operators availability is very, very less in the industry, and training this operator is another important thing, requirement in the industry. Well, another concern is when we're talking about these plants and equipments, the diesel consumption, the fuel consumption is very, very high. It comes to about, thumb rule calculation is about 10,000 liters per kilometer per lane for a new construction. Yeah, otherwise also if you look at the consumption of the fuel for these equipments, crusher to the compressor, so it varies from 5.5 liters to 60, 70 liters per hour diesel consumptions. Once we start, there's a huge quantity of diesel is required. That's we need to understand. So fair knowledge of these plants and equipments is most important for the project manager or the site engineer, or even for the operators. Otherwise, uh, the project optimization of the project resources will be difficult. So this knowledge is very important to keep the financial condition of the project in the healthy condition, or to increase the profit, or to increase as they complete the project as per schedule. This knowledge of these plants and equipment is very, very important. One small concern which I missed here in this slide is that trained operator is very, very important, because they are something like the cooks. So we have beautiful we have all the machineries, costly machineries, and end of the day, the operator the is very, very important. If we do not operate in the right way, that results in poor quality mix and poor quality product. So that's very, very important when we talk about the plants and machinery. So I think my presentation is complete now. Any clarify, I'm happy to share for any clarifications. Over to you,
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. You have started with the crushing and ended with the paving. You have taken the entire life cycle of the machinery, all the machines, whichever is used for the highway construction. and it's amazing
Thank you,
presentation,
sir.
including the technology, the applications, how it works, including the PTR, the pneumatic tire roller. See, this highway construction happening in this space without machinery it is not possible. As a civil engineer, we think that why we should understand about the machine. Mechanical engineers are there; they will do the machines, but actually they manufacture the machines. The applications is for the civil engineers only. Mainly the construction professionals who are there in the project, they have to decide the right combination. As Sir is told, the right combination we have to select. It should not be overutilized or underutilized. Optimum utilization is must. As he has shown, the pug mill and the paver, it is having a difference. Pug mill is having the capacity of 200 metric ton, and your paving capacity is of 500. It is on the stage, it is underutilized. So as an engineer, we have to plan the maximum output. How can we increase one more pug mill? That you have to, based on the site conditions, you have to decide whether two pug mills are required or one pug mill is enough or two hot. Even I know once in a project, the hot mix plant was happening, hot mix production is happening, and there was a requirement. I mean, so the project has to be completed in 3 months or something, the limited time. But the hot mix plant was running 24 hours. It could not able to cater. Then the management took the call. They told, why can't we shift one more hot mix plant here for 3 months? They made all the calculations, the cost benefit analysis, whether I can extend my project or I can complete the project with more machinery. That has to be taken by the call of a civil engineer. As a construction professional, you have to take, based on your orders, the mechanical engineers will support, the plant and machinery engineers, they will support. The call has to be taken by the construction professionals only, so that the understanding of the machinery capacity and the various applications and limitations at the project condition, that also you have to understand. You may be having two pavers or two hot mix plants, but how many tippers you have, how many dumpers you have, that matters, because unnecessary the fuel will be burning if you don't have proper dumpers. This happens in the plant conditions. Yeah, the enough numbers you have to calculate what is the cycle time, the lead time between the plant and the site, and how much distance it takes, and enough drivers. As Sarah is told, lot of skilled workmen is required. For that, you have to know the understandings about the how many people required, whether we have standby people. You can have more people, and the machinery you can utilize in a better way. On that case, you should understand about the skill set, whether the grader operator. I have seen in my project where if you compare two grader operators, one operator can do the work in within an hour, other operator it will take nearly 6 hours for doing the work. If you are the owner of that particular activity, you will analyze 6 hours how much is my fuel cost. Whether I should have a better grader operator or how can I save the fuel. That is the requirement these days. As a site engineer, if you go for a highway project also, you should do all these calculations at the project. Then only you can be successful. Otherwise, you will be called as a supervisor. Whatever the work is engaged by your senior, you just supervising the things. That's happening in the lot of projects. That's the reason they are asking, sir, we need experienced people. Why they are asking experienced people? They understand the experienced people have knowledge. If you have this knowledge at the early stage, definitely most of the engineers are scalable and you are hireable by the project, because they look for the engineers who are at the young age who can do the work at given time in the right manner, because they don't have time. All the projects these days are coming with the timelines. Earlier days, 48 months and 36 months is the timeline for the project. Nowadays, they are asking 24 months. Reliance has put a project nearby for 2000 crores. The timeline is 24 months. On that, you take out 6 months in every year, 3 to 4 months. The monsoon period is there. On that time, you can't do any work of the highway construction. So, if you deduct 3 months for the monsoon period, for the 2 years, 6 months is gone. Only 18 months. On that, mobilization, demobilization you remove. Then you have hardly 14 months. In these 14 months, you have to do all the work for the technology is required. what are the technology and the sophisticated machinery you need, and good operators, good engineers you require. And the work also has to happen 24/7. If you take our Chennai, Bangalore-Mysore expressway, Village is constructing from Bangalore to Mysore. This project is around 4,000 crores. They have to complete the project in 18 months, they are telling. Understand how much volume of work they are handling, how much volume of people they are handling, what are the machineries they are having, how many crushing plants they have, how many graders. All these calculations are done by the construction professional who know the highway engineering. So my sincere request is, at this stage, take this COVID time as a learning time, and you can do a lot of in your area, whatever. Somebody may be interested in highway, somebody may be interested in other irrigation, and so many other fields are available in the civil engineering. You do your sincere work. How I can enter into field, how I can be productivity, how I can increase, I can make a change in the project, how I can become employable. Those things you have to take into your consideration. And sir has given excellent presentation from the start to end. He has given the entire life cycle of all the machineries, because the machine's cost is very much high in the project. That is the capital cost. None of the companies, each and every company who is taking the project, large projects, they show their machineries. And they show the CV of their employees also, how many projects you worked, how much you are effective. What is the track record of yours? The engineer's track record also these days are asking. NHAI is asking you to submit your project manager CVs and the engineer's CV. Like that, the requirement is coming from the employer. 100 plus airports are under construction and renovation, including if you take any city in India, all the airports are under the reconstruction and the capacity addition. There is enough opportunities coming up. My sincere request is you have to take this as a career, and you have to progress well. Mr. Ashwin, would you like to add something? After then we will take the Q&A.
We can start with the Q&A.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sir, there is a lot of questions from the audience. We will see. In case of vibratory roller, what is the minimum and the maximum frequency? One of the audience has asked. Varun, I think he is from SJCAT.
Sir, most important here is whenever we are compacting asphalt mixers, the amplitude should be less and the frequency should be more. That's the basic thing. Whenever we are compacting soil and aggregate layers, amplitude should be more and frequency should be less. So for asphalt layer, only we have to remember the low frequency, I mean low amplitude, lowest, you put in the lowest amplitude. Frequency is amplitude generally, the highest amplitude is about 1 mm, and when it comes to the frequency, it varies from 1000 to 2200, 2700 vibrations per minute. But more than that, what is more important is keep the frequency, the amplitude less for all asphalt layers. And especially for thin layers, we should not go for vibratory rolling.
We should not go for the vibratory roller.
Yes.
So you answered his question. One more question is from other person. This is also regarding roller. This is Arvind Kumar from Chennai. What is the minimum frequency in case of a static roller and the pneumatic roller? He is asking.
There is no frequency. Both static roller and pneumatic roller, they are operated. Vibrations cannot be given for that. Only for vibratory roller, vibrations are given. Or oscillatory motion is given. So this the static roller and the pneumatic roller is done. The density is achieved mainly by the gross weight of the roller that we use. So the compaction efficiency, the density we achieve is based on the weight of that roller. So weight of the roller and of course thickness of the layer and material properties, the speed, etc. So it depends on that, and they are not operated in the vibratory mode or oscillatory mode.
Sir, can you share the presentation? Actually, one person, Mr. Saidar, I think he is from Lucknow. Can you explain the flow chart of slide number 43? Is asking.
43, yes, 1 second. Slide number?
43, sir.
Yeah. 40. Yeah. See this 43. Yes, is this?
Sir, it is not. One second. Audience, it is visible.
Is
Yes,
this
sir.
the slide? Is this the slide, sir?
I will check with him. Syed, is this the same what you are asking or next slide? Syed Haider. No, you have to pin his presentation. Then only Anjan Kumar you can see. 1 second, sir. I think.
Yeah, please. Yeah, please.
Can you please explain the flow chart of slide number 43? I think this is not in this flow chart is not there. No?
Maybe is this?
Yeah, it may be. It may be that one, sir. The earlier one.
This one?
Yes, yes. He told yes.
Yeah. Okay. So here, what is shown here is before that, I'll show the other chart, and then I'll come to that. This is a typical batch mix plant, way batch plant for this, and the flow diagram shown there is for this plant. Here you can see the hopper bins here. Generally, there will be 4 hopper bins. One hopper bin will have 12 mm aggregates and the 6 mm aggregates and quarry dust and 10 mm aggregates. 4 bins and 4 different types of materials. Depending upon our job mix formula, the design, the openings below these hopper bins are adjusted and the speed of this conveyor belt adjusted. And this from these cold hopper bins, from the aggregate storage bins, the mixed aggregates gets into this unit. This is called dryer. What is the function of this dryer? These mixed aggregates are heated to the required temperature, only heated. And then these heated aggregates are taken to a bucket elevator in this tower type of plants to what is called screening unit. These aggregates are screened here. There will be sieves, different types of sieves as per our requirement, and these heated aggregates are sieved here. And after sieving these heated aggregates, they are stored in the different bins, 12 mm, 10 mm, and 6 mm and dust. So they are stored in the different bins, and then they are weighed. The weigh pads are attached, and these heated, sieved aggregates are weighed. Because that's why it's called batch mix plant. And then these materials separately they are fed into this pug mill. What is pug mill? The mixing unit, where these materials and the bitumen, preheated bitumen is pumped here, and these preheated aggregates and bitumen are mixed, and then it goes to the storage bin or to the tipper and then taken to the job site. And the same is presented here in this flow chart. So these are the hopper bins, cold aggregate bins. One will have 10 mm, 12 mm and 6 mm and the quarry dust. And we will have openings here depending upon say 12 mm maybe 30% requirement, then 6 mm maybe only 10%. So based on the requirement, the openings are adjusted. The conveyor belt speed is adjusted in the control room. And these aggregates from these hopper bins are taken, and this is a vibratory skid. By any chance, if there is any oversized aggregate material comes, and this oversized material taken away here. So this is a conveyor belt, and this mixed material gets into this drying unit, what's called drying unit. So here in this particular figure, it is counterflow. That means aggregates are fed from this side and the burner is on this side. So these aggregates are heated to the required temperature, very high temperature, and the fine particles gets collected in this bag house, waste dust collector, so that it is not directly gets into the atmosphere, not polluting. So after heating these aggregates, these heated aggregates are taken to the top level where this through the bucket conveyor, and there we get what is called vibratory skids. They are sieved, literally sieved, and then after sieving, different sizes of aggregates are separately weighed. They get into different bins that is not clearly shown here, and they are weighed. After weighing, the heated materials gets into the mixing unit or the pug mill, and to this pug mill, a preheated bitumen is fed here. Suppose if there is a wrap material, recycled pavement material, bitumen material to be added to the mix, then this wrap material is added in the pug mill, not here. So it is added, all the wrap material, then they are added in the pug mill, not in the drying time. So if that is there, it's an optional. If you want to add wrap material, it can be added here in the pug mill, and after mixing, maybe all this operation starting from here to here, the entire mixing, it just happen in 30-40 seconds. And after mixing, either it can be loaded, the mix can be unloaded to the tipper, or if tipper is not there, we can have a silo, a separate silo here, it can be stored there. Right. So there is a filler can also be added. Sometimes cement or lime or some other material additive can also, we can have an additional attachment. And in this figure, that filler means that indication. This filler silo is that lime, cement. Generally, cement is added as a filler for bituminous mix for the top layer, bituminous concrete or such layer. So this is the storage for that. Anything, sir? I think anything, sir? Am I clear there?
Yes, sir. And there is Mr. Balu as actually he is working for Hindustan Construction Company for a tunnel project. His question is, please tell about the standard operating cost per hour of highway equipment, including fuel, spares, operator, as per the model of equipment he is asking.
Standard
operating cost he is asking, sir.
Cost of what?
Cost of operation of machinery per hour.
See, generally the equipment investment is 15 to 20%, and the equipment maintenance cost is, you can say, thumb rule 15 to 20%.
Okay. 20% of the cost.
15 to 20%, because there is insurance, all those things involved, and maintenance cost is 15%, and overhead and fixed cost, insurance and so on, all this as company. So you can say 15 to 20%. You can say. Investment is about 15 to 20, and this cost is about 15 to 20. It's a thumb rule. Thumb
rule only, exactly based on the equipment's wear and tear and the surfaces, and not many factors matters, including the when the location and the temperature conditions, everything matters. According to the location, the volume of the project only we can decide. If the width of the paving is more, then the cost will be less. If the width of the paving is very less and you need to shift the paver many more times, then the cost will go up. That depends upon the project volume and the site conditions. Ashutosh Sharan from Alliance University, his question is, sir, the pavers and compaction process is same in case of flyovers and in the curves. The paving or compaction. His question is, in the flyovers and the curves or the compaction process is the same. I think the mastic asphalt is used, no, sir?
No, but any paving, the general principle remains same. It should be continuous. That's the general principle. And always paving should be continuous. So whether it is curb paving or the concrete paving or the asphalt mix paving.
No, one more question is, in the flyovers and the structures, whether the compaction is the same procedure or a different procedure we are using.
Compaction remains same. Compaction remains same for asphalt layers. Depending upon the thickness. If it is, as I said, very thin layer, no compaction. Very static compaction is sufficient. Vibratory compaction is not that, or even just mild vibrations are required. But the compaction operating procedure remains same, whether it is on flyovers or on the at grade roads. It remains same.
Few more questions are there, sir. Will you take?
Yeah, please.
How batching
is done in hot mix plant, is it manually or mechanically? It is mechanical, Mr. Siddharaj. Sir has explained just now only the slide. It is done mechanical means only way batching they are using.
Yes,
Whereas
everything is controlled in the control room, master control room, highly mechanized.
once it is set auto mode,
Yes,
you
yes.
can't. You no need to change the machine automatically. It runs the proportion, the grade, the temperature,
Everything is
everything.
required. It's a 4 to 6 crores machine, so everything is controlled. Very costly machines. Hot mix plant, batch mix plants is about 4 to 6 crores or even 7 crores.
Sir,
That is the cost. Everything is controlled, master controlled.
yeah, sir,
High
yes,
tech. Even you get air condition also if you want.
either asking your email ID so that he can write if any questions are coming
Yeah,
up.
please. Yeah, please. You can share. You can share. No issue.
I can share.
Anjaneyappa at rvce.edu.in.
Okay, sir.
I'll, if you want,
Type in the message box.
it is here.
Slide is in the last slide. It is there, no, sir?
I think it is here. Is
Yeah,
it screen visible?
you can take a picture of it and you can.
Is this visible?
Yes, sir. Yes,
it is
sir.
visible.
Visible. That's it, sir. A few audience are asking the PPT whether it is available for them or not. They are asking.
Yeah, it will be available online very soon. All this I'll share in the what is that? YouTube. You can wait. Maybe in another 2-3 days I'll upload all this in YouTube. You can check, please. Everything. So many people are asking. Maybe by Monday or Tuesday you can see all this in YouTube.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And with this, we will conclude, sir. And it was a very excellent session. And within the time, you have completed the scope. For the projects, the scope, cost, time, all the three are important. We have fixed the 4 to 5:30 exactly. By 5:30, you have completed the presentation and the Q&A. And the scope, what is given required for the audience, that is also you have given in a very good manner. And I hope the audience enjoyed this session. Definitely, I have enjoyed this session nicely. The feedback form is given to the audience, and once they filled up, I will share with you, sir. And I thank on behalf of Construction Management Training Institute for coming coming and sharing your knowledge, that too in the evening time. Most of the people spend their evenings in the home, but still you are in college, and we thought we disturbed your routine schedule. And it was a very informative session. And I thank Mr. Ashwin for the support through Rasta. Definitely, we will conduct many more programs. There is 2-3 programs are planned next week, sir. One is on